I'm Stephanie Mitchell, 25 years old, and I never thought I'd be filing a police report against my own parents. But that morning when I looked out my window to an empty driveway where my brand new car should have been, everything changed. Panic turned to disbelief as I watched my security footage, my parents using a key I never gave them, driving away with my car at 5 a.m. Then came the overheard phone call. Amber will love her surprise birthday gift. My stomach dropped. My car, my $60,000, my years of saving, gone. When the police arrived at my door, I was shaking but certain. Before I dive into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever had family take advantage of you, and subscribe to join our community of people reclaiming their lives from toxic relationships. Trust me, what happened next will show you exactly why family doesn't always deserve unconditional loyalty. Growing up in the Mitchell household meant one thing: I was always second best to my younger sister Amber. From the beginning, it was clear who the golden child was and who was expected to simply make do. My parents, Linda and Robert Mitchell, never tried to hide their preference. Amber's birthdays were extravagant affairs with bouncy houses, catered food, and mountains of gifts. Mine were afterthoughts, store-bought cake, and practical gifts like school supplies. When Amber joined the cheerleading squad in high school, my parents never missed a game. They proudly displayed her trophies in the living room cabinet. When I made the debate team and qualified for nationals, they were too busy to attend. My medal ended up in my bedroom drawer. College was where the favoritism became impossible to ignore. Amber received a fully funded ride to her dream school. My parents emptied their savings and took out loans to ensure she could attend without working a single hour. Meanwhile, I juggled 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 gigapascals at the state university. I lived off ramen and caffeine, often studying until 3 a.m. before opening the campus coffee shop at 6 a.m. You're just more independent, Stephanie, my mother would say whenever I pointed out the disparity. Amber needs more support. By 21, I'd had enough. With my marketing degree in hand, I moved out and vowed to build my life on my own terms. No more comparisons, no more feeling like an afterthought in my own family. The next 4 years were transformative. I secured an entry-level position at Horizon Marketing, a prestigious firm in the city. Through relentless work and creative campaigns, I climbed the ladder faster than anyone expected. Last month, at just 25, I was promoted to Senior Marketing Strategist, a position most people don't reach until their 30s. With the promotion came a substantial raise. After years of careful budgeting and saving, I finally had enough for what I'd always wanted: a sleek, midnight blue Audi A5. Not the most expensive car on the lot, but to me, it represented everything I'd accomplished without a single dollar of family support. The day I drove it off the lot was possibly the proudest moment of my life. I'd negotiated the price down, arranged my own financing, and signed the papers all by myself. The new car smell was the scent of independence. A week ago, I invited my parents over to see the car. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see that I was successful in my own right. "It's nice, honey," my mom said with a distracted smile. "Though I wonder if you should have saved that money for a house down payment instead." My father circled the car, inspecting it with narrowed eyes. "Foreign cars are expensive to maintain. You should have consulted me before making such a big purchase." 20 minutes later, they were gushing on the phone with Amber about her recent Instagram milestone of reaching 5,000 followers. My car, my achievement, was already forgotten. What I didn't realize was that during their visit, one of them must have taken my spare key from the kitchen drawer where I'd temporarily placed it before buying a proper key hook. I never thought my own parents would steal from me. Amber had her own history of borrowing my things without permission. In high school, she'd take my clothes and return them stained. In college, she'd use my laptop when hers was broken and somehow my files would go missing. My parents always defended her. "Sharing is caring, Stephanie. Don't be selfish." Recently, Amber had been struggling. She'd lost her job at the boutique where she worked after too many unexplained absences. At 23, she was still living at home, still being bankrolled by our parents. Her birthday was coming up that weekend, and I'd already mailed her a gift card more than generous considering our rocky relationship. Little did I know that my parents had decided my car would make the perfect gift for their precious daughter. Without asking, without paying, without a second thought about the person who had actually earned it. That fateful morning started like any other Tuesday. My alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., and I hit snooze exactly once before dragging myself to the bathroom. I brushed my teeth while mentally reviewing my presentation scheduled for 10 a.m. After a quick shower, I dressed in the outfit I'd laid out the night before: navy pants, cream blouse, and the pearl earrings I'd bought myself to celebrate my promotion. Coffee in hand, I grabbed my laptop bag and headed to the front door, already calculating if I had time to stop for a bagel before work. That's when I glanced out my living room window, a habit I'd developed since buying the car, just to admire it sitting in my assigned parking space, except it wasn't there. I blinked, convinced my pre-caffeine brain was playing tricks on me. I moved closer to the window, coffee sloshing over the rim of my mug onto the hardwood floor. The space was empty. My car was gone. No, 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 I muttered, rushing outside in my socks. The morning dew soaked through immediately as I stood staring at the empty parking spot. My stomach clenched with that particular hollowness that comes with sudden loss. I spun around, scanning the small lot of my apartment complex, irrationally hoping I'd somehow parked elsewhere and forgotten. I hadn't. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. 3 months earlier, there had been a series of car break-ins in the neighborhood, prompting me to install a doorbell camera that also captured my parking space. Thank God for that paranoia. I tapped through to the night's footage and fast-forwarded. 2 a.m. Nothing. 3 a.m. A stray cat wandering by. 4 a.m. Still nothing. 4:52 a.m. Movement. My breath caught as two familiar figures approached my car. My parents. My father held something in his hand that glinted in the security light, a key. My mother looked around nervously while my father unlocked my car with practiced ease. They both got in, started it up, and drove away. The entire theft took less than 2 minutes. I sank onto my couch, disbelief warring with a growing rage in my chest. They wouldn't, they couldn't, but they did. With shaking hands, I called my father's cell, straight to voicemail. Then my mother's. Same result. I texted both, "Where is my car?" No response. As I paced my apartment, my phone pinged with an Instagram notification. Amber had posted a new photo. With mounting dread, I opened the app. There she was, my sister, leaning against my car with a giant red bow on the hood. The caption read, "Oh my God. Best early birthday gift ever. Thank you at Mom and Dad for the new wheels. Number blessed, number new coroner, number dream come true." The comments were already flooding in, friends congratulating her, asking about the model, praising our parents' generosity. My vision blurred with tears of frustration. I called Rachel, my best friend since college, and the only person who truly understood my family dynamic. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Steph, that's not just morally wrong, that's literally grand theft auto." "But they're my parents," I said weakly, the conditioning of a lifetime making me hesitate despite my anger. Rachel's voice softened. "Honey, if anyone else had stolen your $60,000 car, what would you do? Call the police." I answered without hesitation. "The fact that they're related to you doesn't give them the right to take what's yours. You worked for that car. You earned it. They stole it." She was right. I knew she was right. But my finger hovered over the emergency call button for a full 5 minutes before I finally pressed it. 911. "What's your emergency?" The dispatcher's calm voice brought the reality of what I was doing crashing down. "I need to report a stolen vehicle," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I have the thieves on my security camera. I know who they are." 2 officers arrived at my apartment within 30 minutes. Officer Jackson, A woman around my age with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor took my statement while her partner, Officer Diaz, reviewed the security footage on my phone. "And you're certain you didn't give your parents permission to take the vehicle?" Officer Jackson asked, her pen poised over her notepad. "Positive. I would never. That car is everything to me." My voice broke slightly. "They didn't even ask." "Do you have the purchase documentation and registration?" I provided copies of everything, the loan papers, registration, insurance cards, all in my name. All proof that the midnight blue Audi belonged solely to me. "Based on the evidence, well, put out an alert for your vehicle and send officers to your parents' residence," Officer Jackson said, standing up. "Given that you know the location and have video evidence, this should be straightforward." As they left, Officer Jackson paused at the door. "Family theft cases are always difficult. You're doing the right thing standing up for yourself." Her words were meant to be comforting, but as I closed the door behind them, I felt anything but comforted. I had just reported my own parents to the police. There was no coming back from this. The next 2 hours crawled by in a haze of anxiety. I'd called my boss Kelly to explain the situation, and she'd been surprisingly understanding, telling me to take the day and keep her updated. I'd changed out of my work clothes into jeans and a sweatshirt, unable to focus on anything but the imagined confrontation happening at my parents' house. Just after noon, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Miss Mitchell? This is Officer Jackson. We've located your vehicle at your parents' residence as expected. We're preparing to recover it, but I wanted to ask if you'd like to be present." Sometimes in family matters, having the owner on site helps clarify things. My mouth went dry. "I'll be there." The 20-minute drive to my parents' suburban home in the back of a police cruiser was surreal. We pulled up to the familiar 2-story colonial where I'd grown up, now with my Audi parked proudly in the driveway as if it belonged there. The red bow was still on the hood. Officer Jackson and Officer Diaz approached the front door while I waited by the cruiser, heart hammering against my ribs. I watched my mother answer, her face transitioning from polite confusion to shock as they identified themselves. My father appeared behind her, his posture immediately defensive. Even from the street, I could see his face reddening the same look he got whenever anyone challenged his authority. They were speaking with the officers, gesturing emphatically, occasionally pointing toward me or the car. After several minutes, Officer Jackson motioned for me to approach. "Stephanie Ann Mitchell." My father's voice boomed across the lawn as I walked up the driveway. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Recovering my stolen property," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Stolen? Don't be ridiculous." My mother's eyes were wide with indignation. "We were just borrowing it for Amber's birthday." "It's a family thing." Officer Diaz stepped between us. "Mrs. Mitchell, taking a vehicle without the owner's permission constitutes theft, regardless of family relationship." "This is absurd," my father sputtered. "We're her parents. We changed her diapers for God's sake. We paid for her braces." "Did you pay for this car, sir?" Officer Jackson asked calmly. "Well, no, but then it's not yours to take or give away," she stated firmly. "Miss Mitchell has provided proof of ownership and purchase. She's also shown us security footage of you taking the vehicle without permission at approximately 5 a.m. My mother's face crumpled into tears, her go-to tactic when confronted. "We were going to tell her after the party. It was just going to be for the weekend. Amber needed something special for her birthday." "Then you should have asked, Mom," I said, fighting to keep my voice from shaking. "Or better yet, you should have bought her a car yourselves instead of stealing mine." At that moment, the front door flew open and Amber stormed out, still in pajamas despite it being afternoon. "What's going on? Why are there cops?" She stopped short when she saw me. "Stephanie? What are you doing here?" "Taking back my car," I replied. Her face contorted. "Your car? But Mom and Dad gave it to me for my birthday." "They can't give what isn't theirs," I said, walking past her toward the Audi. My heart sank as I got closer. There was already a scratch on the passenger door that hadn't been there yesterday. The gas tank was half empty. When I opened the door, the new car smell had been replaced with the cloying scent of Amber's perfume. Fast food wrappers littered the passenger seat, and the settings for my seat and mirrors had all been changed. "I'm going to need the key," I said, turning back to my parents. "This is ridiculous!" my father exploded. "We are your parents! You don't call the police on family!" "What will the neighbors think?" As if on cue, I noticed movement in windows up and down the street. Mrs. Henderson next door wasn't even pretending not to watch, standing on her porch with her arms crossed. Officer Diaz stepped forward. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice and provide the key to the vehicle. Otherwise, we will be forced to take more serious action." My mother disappeared inside, returning moments later with my car key. She thrust it at me, tears streaming down her face. "I hope you're happy," she hissed, humiliating us in front of the whole neighborhood over a misunderstanding. "A misunderstanding," I repeated incredulously. "You stole my car and gave it to Amber." "It was a loan," my father shouted, "for her birthday." "Which you didn't ask me about," I replied, inserting the key into the ignition. The engine purred to life, a small comfort amid the chaos. Officer Jackson approached me. "Miss Mitchell, do you wish to press charges for the theft?" I looked at my family, my father's rage, my mother's manipulative tears, and Amber's entitled scowl. Years of being the afterthought, the one who had to fend for herself, crystallized into resolve. "Yes," I said clearly. "I want to press charges." My father's face went from red to purple. "If you do this, Stephanie, you're no longer part of this family. Do you understand me? You will be dead to us." The words should have hurt more than they did. Instead, they confirmed I was making the right choice. "I guess I've been dead to you for years," I replied, closing the car door. "The difference is now I know it." As I drove away with the police cruiser following, my phone exploded with notifications. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all texting to express their shock and demand I drop the charges immediately. My father had obviously started making calls the moment I left. The family war had officially begun. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of emotions. Relief at having my car back warred with a hollowness in my chest that threatened to consume me. It'd done it. It stood up to my family and reclaimed what was mine, but victory tasted like ash in my mouth. When I pulled into my parking space, Rachel was waiting, a bag of takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant in her hands and determination in her eyes. "Cavalry's here," she announced, pulling me into a fierce hug as soon as I stepped out of the car. I brought pad thai, spring rolls, and enough wine to get us through the initial shock. Inside my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, the adrenaline finally draining from my system. Rachel poured generous glasses of wine and unpacked the food while I recounted everything that had happened at my parents' house. "I'm proud of you," she said when I finished. "You know that, right? What they did was wrong on every level, and you refusing to be their doormat anymore is healthy." I pushed the noodles around my plate. "Then why do I feel like the worst daughter in the world?" "Because they programmed you to feel that way," Rachel replied simply. "They conditioned you to put their needs and Amber's needs above your own. Breaking that programming feels wrong even when it's right." She wasn't wrong. My phone continued to buzz with messages from family members. My Aunt Susan. "How could you do this to your own parents?" My Uncle Mike. "Family problems should stay within the family." My cousin Tyler. "You've broken your mother's heart." Not one message asked how I felt about having my car stolen. I silenced my phone and tried to focus on the evening with Rachel, who insisted on staying over to provide moral support. We watched mindless reality TV until midnight, a temporary escape from my reality. The next morning, I returned to work, grateful for the distraction. Kelly, my boss, called me into her office immediately. "How are you holding up?" she asked with genuine concern. "I'm okay," I lied. Thank you for being understanding yesterday. Of course. She nodded. Just a heads up, there was an incident while you were out. My stomach dropped. What kind of incident? Kelly grimaced. Your sister came by looking for you. When Jen at reception said you were out, she became agitated, started shouting that you were ruining her birthday, and demanded your home address. Heat flooded my face. I'm so sorry, Kelly. I never thought she'd bring this to work. It's not your fault, Kelly assured me, but I wanted you to know. Security escorted her out, and we've provided them with her description in case she returns. The embarrassment of having my family drama spill into my professional life was almost worse than the theft itself. I spent the rest of the day fielding curious glances from coworkers who'd witnessed Amber's meltdown. By evening, things had escalated further. I returned home to find my mother sitting in her car outside my apartment building. Mom, I acknowledged, keeping my distance. What are you doing here? Her eyes were red-rimmed, but the tears seemed to have given way to cold anger. I came to talk some sense into you. This ridiculous police report, you need to drop it immediately. It's not ridiculous. You and Dad stole my car. We borrowed it. For your sister. She threw up her hands in exasperation. Family shares, Stephanie. Sharing implies consent. I replied, You didn't ask. You took. Because you would have said no. She shot back, inadvertently admitting they knew exactly what they were doing. Yes. I would have. Because it's my car that I paid for with my money. Amber isn't entitled to it just because she wants it. My mother's expression hardened. Your father and I have always given you everything. The absurdity of the statement made me laugh. Really? Like when you paid for Amber's entire college education while I worked 3 jobs? Or when you missed my graduation because Amber had a cold? You've always been so independent, she said, repeating the familiar excuse. Amber needs more support. Amber is 23 years old. She needs to grow up. And you and Dad need to stop enabling her. I started walking toward my building. I'm not dropping the charges, Mom. Then you leave us no choice. She called after me. We've already spoken with your father's friend at the bank. We're cutting you off. I turned back. Cutting me off from what? I've been supporting myself for years. The flicker in her eyes told me she'd forgotten that fact. Well, you're cut out of the will then. Fine by me, I replied, continuing inside. What I didn't tell her was that her threat had sent a chill down my spine, not because I cared about any inheritance, but because it reminded me that my parents still had access to my original bank account. I'd opened it as a teenager with them as co-signers and had never gotten around to removing their names, though I'd opened a new primary account years ago. The next morning, I received an automated alert from my old bank. Unusual account activity detected. Someone had attempted to withdraw $5,000, nearly the entire balance from my account. The bank had flagged it as suspicious because the request came from a branch across town, nowhere near where I normally banked. When I called, the representative confirmed my fears. The withdrawal request was made in person by Linda Mitchell. Since she's a co-signer on the account, it would normally be allowed, but our system flagged it because of the amount and location. I thanked the representative profusely for the bank's security measures, immediately closed the account, and transferred the remaining funds to my secure account. Then I called Officer Jackson to file an additional report. The car theft had been just the beginning. Now my family was attempting financial retaliation. That evening, as I documented the bank incident for the police report, I realized this situation had grown far beyond a family squabble. My parents weren't just hurt or angry, they were actively trying to punish me for standing up to them. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge a painful truth. This toxic dynamic wasn't new. It had been there all along, hidden beneath the veneer of family. And now that I'd broken the unspoken rule, never challenged the hierarchy that placed me firmly at the bottom, they were showing exactly who they'd always been. A week after filing the initial police report, I received a call from the district attorney's office. The theft of my car valued well over the grand theft threshold, along with the attempted bank withdrawal, had caught their attention. Miss Mitchell? This is Rebecca Martinez from the DA's office. I've been assigned to your case. My heart raced as she explained that they were taking the charges seriously. Grand theft auto, attempted financial fraud, the case had moved beyond a simple family dispute in the eyes of the law. Given the value of the vehicle and the clear evidence, we believe we have a strong case, Miss Martinez explained. I'd like to meet with you to discuss how we'll proceed. 2 days later, I sat across from her in a conference room at the courthouse. Rebecca Martinez was younger than Id expected, perhaps in her mid-30s, with a sharp gaze and organized manner that immediately put me at ease. I want to be transparent with you, she said after reviewing my statement and the evidence. Family cases are complicated. Juries sometimes struggle with them because of the relationship between the parties. But the facts here are straightforward. Your parents took your car without permission, with the intent to permanently deprive you of it by giving it to your sister. They claim it was just a loan, I said, repeating their defense. She smiled thinly. A loan requires the owner's permission, and their social media posts about it being a gift contradict that defense anyway. We spent the next hour going through the details of what had happened, including the attempted bank withdrawal. The financial aspect strengthens our case, she noted. It shows a pattern of disregard for your property rights and suggests retaliation for your police report. As we wrapped up, she looked at me intently. Miss Mitchell, I need to ask, are you prepared for what this means? Criminal prosecution of family members can be extremely difficult emotionally. There will likely be pressure from relatives, possibly public scrutiny, and certainly strain on whatever relationship you have with your parents. I thought about all the messages I'd already received, the ambush at my workplace, the financial attack. I'm already experiencing all of that, I admitted. But I can't back down now. They need to understand that their behavior has consequences. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my resolve. There's a possibility they'll be offered a plea deal, community service, probation, restitution. Would you be amenable to that? As long as they admit what they did was wrong, I replied. That's what matters to me, accountability. The meeting left me feeling more centered but acutely aware of the emotional toll ahead. On the recommendation of both Rachel and Kelly, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Bennett, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Our first session was revelatory. After sharing the basics of my situation, Dr. Bennett asked questions no one had ever posed before. When did you first notice you were treated differently from your sister? How did you feel when your parents missed important events in your life? What messages did you receive about your worth growing up? The answers poured out of me, years of buried hurt finding voice for the first time. By the end of the hour, I was exhausted but lighter somehow. What you're describing, Doctor, Bennett said gently, is a classic golden child, scapegoat dynamic. It's a form of family dysfunction that can cause significant trauma for the scapegoated child. The fact that you've achieved so much despite this speaks to your resilience. I left with homework to join an online support group for family estrangement and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the next week. The support group proved to be an unexpected lifeline. Hearing stories from others who'd been through similar situations helped me feel less alone. One member, a woman in her 40s who'd been estranged from her parents for over a decade, messaged me privately. The first year is the hardest. The guilt, the second-guessing, the flying monkeys they send your way, but I promise you, it gets better. You rebuild your life on your terms. You find your chosen family. Her words sustained me through the next difficult phase, the first court appearance. The courtroom was intimidating, all dark wood and formal proceedings. I sat beside Rebecca while my parents and Amber sat across the aisle with their attorney, Thomas Weaver, an expensive, well-known defense lawyer in our city. My parents hadn't spared any expense to defend themselves, which was ironic considering they'd stolen my car because they claimed they couldn't afford to buy Amber one of her own. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the charges and set a preliminary hearing date. Throughout the proceedings, I could feel my father's glare burning into the side of my face. My mother stared straight ahead, refusing to look at me. Amber texted continuously, barely looking up from her phone. As we were leaving, a familiar voice called my name. "Stephanie! Wait up!" I turned to see my cousin Jessica hurrying toward me. Jessica was my mother's niece, a few years older than me and someone I'd always gotten along with despite our limited contact. "Can we talk?" she asked, glancing nervously at my parents, who were conferring with their attorney across the lobby. We stepped outside, and Jessica immediately surprised me with a hug. "I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong," she said quietly. What Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert did was totally out of line. Tears sprang to my eyes at this unexpected support. "You're the first relative to say that," Jessica grimaced. "They've been calling everyone, spinning the story their way. But this isn't the first time they've pulled something like this." "What do you mean?" "Remember Cousin Michael's tools that went missing? They borrowed those for Uncle Robert's workshop. And Aunt Kathy's antique brooch that disappeared mysteriously showed up on Amber's prom dress." I stared at her, stunned. I had no idea. The families kept it quiet, made excuses, but I'm tired of it. She squeezed my arm. "If you need someone to testify about the pattern, I'm willing." Her support was like finding an unexpected ally in enemy territory. As I drove home, I felt stronger than I had since this ordeal began. I wasn't alone in seeing my parents' behavior for what it was. The truth was finally coming to light. 3 weeks after the initial court appearance, I was starting to settle into a new normal. Work provided a welcome distraction, my sessions with Dr. Bennett were helping me process years of family dynamics, and the legal proceedings had entered a quieter phase as both sides prepared for the preliminary hearing. Then came the unexpected knock at my door around 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. Cautious after everything that had happened, I checked my doorbell camera through my phone before approaching. My parents stood outside my apartment, looking uncharacteristically subdued. My pulse quickened. They hadn't attempted direct contact since my mother's ambush in the parking lot. Why now? What did they want? Against my better judgment, I opened the door but remained in the doorway, blocking entry. "Stephanie," my father began, his tone conciliatory, a rare sound. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked warily. "About this whole situation." My mother's eyes were pleading. "It's gone too far, honey. We're family. We should be able to work this out without courts and lawyers." Something felt off about their sudden change in approach. My father, especially, wasn't one to back down or admit wrongdoing. "You're only saying that because you're facing serious charges," I replied. "If I hadn't called the police, you would have happily let Amber keep my car and told me to get over it." "That's not true," my father protested, though not as forcefully as I'd expected. His hand kept drifting to his jacket pocket, adjusting something. A chill ran down my spine as realization dawned. "Are you recording this conversation?" The flash of guilt across my mother's face confirmed my suspicion. "You are, aren't you? You came here pretending to reconcile, but you're really trying to get me to say something you can use in court." "Stephanie, that's ridiculous," my father blustered. But his hand moved away from his pocket too quickly. "I have nothing more to say to either of you except through my attorney," I said, starting to close the door. "Please leave." My mother jammed her foot in the doorway. "We're still your parents. You can't shut us out. You shut me out years ago," I replied, pushing harder against the door. "The difference is, I'm finally accepting it. Now move your foot before I call the police again." After they left, I immediately called Rebecca Martinez to report the incident. She was disturbed but not surprised. "It was likely an attempt to get you to admit it was all a misunderstanding or that you had given permission for them to take the car," she explained. "Document everything, including the doorbell footage of them arriving and leaving." "Well, add it to our evidence," I spent a restless night replaying the encounter, wondering how my own parents could stoop so low. The next morning brought another unpleasant surprise. Kelly called me into her office as soon as I arrived at work. Her expression was grim. "Stephanie, I need to make you aware of some troubling developments. We've received several anonymous complaints about your work performance over the past week." "What? From whom?" "That's just it, they're anonymous. Emails sent from temporary accounts, claiming you've been unprofessional with clients or taking credit for others' work." She pushed a folder across her desk. "None of it aligns with what I know of your performance, which is why I'm bringing it to you directly instead of HR." I scanned the printed emails, my stomach churning. The accusations were specific enough to sound plausible, but vague enough to be difficult to directly refute. A perfect sabotage strategy. "This isn't true." "None of it," I said, looking up at Kelly. "I know," she replied firmly. "Your work speaks for itself, but I needed you to be aware because we've traced the IP addresses of some of these emails." She turned her computer monitor toward me, showing a report from IT. "They're coming from your sister's place of work and your parents' home internet." The confirmation of my family's efforts to sabotage my career left me breathless. "They're trying to get me fired." Kelly's expression hardened. "Well, they've picked the wrong target and the wrong company. We take harassment seriously, whether it's from strangers or family members. I've already spoken with legal about a cease and desist letter." Her support was overwhelming. "Thank you, Kelly. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. Just keep doing the excellent work you've always done." She paused. "And Stephanie? I think you should consider a restraining order. This level of retaliation is concerning. The attack on my professional reputation was bad enough, but what I discovered that evening was even worse. My credit card was declined while picking up dinner. Checking my banking app, I found all 3 of my credit cards maxed out with charges I hadn't made. Expensive electronics, clothing, jewelry, all purchased online within the last 24 hours. Panicking, I called each credit card company to report fraud. The customer service representative at the third company gave me the information that confirmed my suspicions. "The shipping address for the purchases was in your name, but at a different location," she explained. "An address on Maple Street. My parents' address." "And was there a particular email used for order confirmations?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, it's ambermitchell95@email.com. Identity theft. My own sister had somehow obtained my credit card information and gone on a shopping spree, using our parents' address for delivery. The police took my report immediately, adding it to the growing case file. Officer Jackson called me personally after I filed the report. "Miss Mitchell, I don't want to alarm you, but this pattern of escalation is concerning," she said. "First the car theft, then the bank withdrawal attempt, now identity theft. Each incident is more serious than the last." "What do you think they'll try next?" I asked. The fear I'd been suppressing finally breaking through. "I can't predict that. But I strongly recommend you take additional security measures. Change all your passwords, freeze your credit, and consider installing additional security at your apartment." I followed her advice, spending the next day implementing digital and physical security measures. I also finally took Kelly's advice and filed for a temporary restraining order against all 3 family members. The most painful discovery came that weekend when Rachel and I met for coffee. She seemed unusually hesitant, choosing her words carefully. "Steph, I need to tell you something. Your family has been reaching out to people in your life." "What do you mean?" She pulled out her phone, showing me a message from my mother to her on Facebook. "Rachel, as Stephanie's oldest friend, I'm sure you're concerned about her mental state. She's making terrible accusations against us out of jealousy toward her sister. We're worried she might be having some kind of breakdown. If you truly care about her, please help us convince her to drop these charges and get the help she needs." Similar messages had been sent to other friends from college, former coworkers, even my old neighbors. They're trying to isolate me, I whispered, the realization hitting hard. Make people think I'm crazy so no one believes me. Rachel reached across the table to squeeze my hand. It's not working. Most people either ignored them or reached out to me to check what was really going on. But I thought you should know. Some friends had believed my parents, though. My phone had been noticeably quiet from certain people who'd normally check in regularly. The flying monkeys, as my support group called them, had claimed some casualties in my social circle. The ones who matter are still here, Rachel assured me, seeming to read my thoughts. And we're not going anywhere. Her words were a lifeline in what felt like a sea of betrayal, but the knowledge that my family was actively trying to destroy my reputation, career, and relationships left a wound deeper than I'd thought possible. This wasn't just about a car anymore, it was about my entire life. As the preliminary hearing approached, my meetings with Rebecca Martinez intensified. We met weekly at her office, carefully reviewing the evidence and preparing for what would come next. The defense's strategy is becoming clear, she explained during one session. They're going to paint this as a family misunderstanding that you escalated unnecessarily. They'll likely emphasize your parents' role in raising you, financial support they provided in the past, and suggest you're being ungrateful or vindictive. But that's not what happened, I protested. I know, which is why we need to focus on the facts, not the emotions. She spread several documents across the table. The security footage shows them taking the car without permission at 5 a.m., not a time anyone reasonably borrows something. The social media posts explicitly call it a gift to your sister, indicating they had no intention of returning it. The attempted bank withdrawal and credit card fraud show a pattern of financial abuse and retaliation. We spent hours going over potential questions I might face on the stand, practicing my responses to ensure they remained clear and factual without getting derailed by emotion, a challenging task when discussing my own family. Remember, Rebecca cautioned, Thomas Weaver is known for trying to provoke emotional responses from witnesses. He'll try to make you appear angry, vindictive, or unstable. Your job is to remain calm and stick to the facts, no matter what he says or asks. We conducted mock testimony sessions where she played the role of Weaver, asking increasingly provocative questions designed to make me lose my composure. Isn't it true that you've always been jealous of the attention your parents gave your sister? Wouldn't most daughters be happy to share with family rather than calling the police? Aren't you using this court case to punish your parents for perceived slights throughout your childhood? The first few attempts were rough. I found myself getting defensive, emotional, or drawn into justifying my feelings rather than focusing on the legal issues at hand. But gradually, with Rebecca's coaching and my own determination, I improved. Parallel to the legal preparations, my therapy sessions with Dr. Bennett continued to provide crucial support. WED moved beyond the initial crisis response to deeper work on the family dynamics that had shaped me. What? I'm hearing, Doctor. Bennett said during one particularly insightful session is that you've spent your life trying to earn love and validation that was freely given to your sister. That creates a particular type of wound, one that affects how you view yourself and your worth in all relationships. Her observations struck a chord. It never fully connected my tendency to overwork, my difficulty accepting help, and my reluctance to ask for what I needed to my family experiences. The legal case is about the car and financial theft, she continued, but the emotional case is about the theft of something even more valuable. Your sense of security, belonging, and worthiness in your family. That's the deeper betrayal you're actually confronting. These insights helped me understand why this situation felt so devastating despite my years of independence from my family. I wasn't just fighting for my car or financial security. I was finally standing up for the recognition and respect I'd been denied my entire life. The support group continued to provide practical advice and encouragement. Many members had faced similar escalations from family members when they'd finally set boundaries. It's called an extinction burst, explained one longtime member. When a dysfunctional system is threatened, it often gets worse before it gets better. They're pulling out all the stops because your standing firm challenges the role they assigned you. Armed with this understanding, I felt more prepared when my father's lawyer reached out to Rebecca with a plea deal offer 2 weeks before the preliminary hearing. Rebecca called me immediately. They're offering to plead guilty to a lesser charge of temporary, unauthorized use of a vehicle instead of grand theft auto. They would pay restitution for the scratch repair and gas, complete 50 hours of community service each, and the charges would be reduced to misdemeanors. What about the financial fraud attempts? I asked. They're claiming those were separate misunderstandings, not connected to the car incident. Her tone made it clear what she thought of that defense. And what do you think I should do? I asked, torn between wanting the ordeal to end and needing true accountability. Legally speaking, it's not a terrible offer for a first offense with family members, she admitted. But it doesn't address the pattern of behavior or the additional financial attacks. More importantly, it doesn't include any admission that what they did was fundamentally wrong, just technically improper. I took the weekend to consider the offer, discussing it with Rachel, Dr. Bennett, and my support group. The perspectives varied, but one common theme emerged. Whatever I decided needed to be for me, not for family peace or appearances. On Monday, I gave Rebecca my answer. We would counteroffer. I would consider accepting a plea to reduce charges, but only if it included all the financial incidents and required family counseling alongside the community service. Most importantly, they would need to make a formal acknowledgement that their actions constituted theft and fraud, not misunderstandings. They'll probably reject those terms, Rebecca warned. Then we go to trial. I replied with newfound resolve. As predicted, my parents refused the counteroffer. Thomas Weaver's response was dismissive. The Mitchells are not prepared to admit to actions they did not commit. The offer as originally presented stands. With negotiations failed, we shifted fully into trial preparation mode. Rebecca secured testimony from the bank representative about the withdrawal attempt and from Kelly about the work harassment. Officer Jackson would testify about the initial theft report and investigation. Most surprisingly, my cousin Jessica formally agreed to testify about the pattern of similar behaviors Shed witnessed throughout the years. Meanwhile, my support network continued to grow in unexpected ways. Taylor, Officer Jackson's sister who worked as a paralegal, reached out after hearing about my situation from her brother. We met for coffee and connected instantly over shared experiences with family dysfunction. Family isn't just blood. She told me over our second meetup. It's who shows up for you, who respects your boundaries, who wants what's best for you even when it's not convenient for them. At work, several colleagues formed an informal support squad, ensuring I was never alone when entering or leaving the building in case Amber made another appearance. Kelly implemented a company-wide security training that, while not explicitly linked to my situation, established clear protocols for handling unauthorized visitors. Online, I'd connected with others who had survived family estrangement and built fulfilling lives on their own terms. Their stories gave me hope that there was life beyond the current pain, that I could create a chosen family built on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. As the trial date approached, I realized something profound had shifted within me. The constant anxiety that had characterized the early weeks of this ordeal had transformed into a steady determination. The guilt that had initially plagued me, the voice questioning if I was overreacting or being unfair to my family, had quieted, replaced by a clearer understanding of the difference between healthy family dynamics and toxic ones. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was standing firmly in my own truth without seeking external validation, not from my parents, not from Amber, not even from the court system. Whatever the legal outcome, I had already reclaimed something essential that had been taken from me long before my car: my right to be treated with basic dignity and respect. The night before the preliminary hearing, I sat alone in my apartment, looking at old family photos I'd pulled from storage. Pictures of birthday parties where my smile didn't quite reach my eyes, holiday gatherings where I stood slightly apart from the family circle, graduation photos where my parents' pride seemed performed rather than felt. I deserved better, I whispered to the little girl in those photos. and am finally fighting for both of us. The courthouse loomed large on the morning of the preliminary hearing, its imposing architecture a physical manifestation of the weight of the proceedings about to take place. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a conservative navy pantsuit that projected both professionalism and seriousness. Rebecca had advised against anything too formal or too casual, seeking the right balance to convey respectability without appearing calculated. We arrived early, taking our seats at the prosecution table while I tried to calm my racing heart. When my parents and Amber entered with Thomas Weaver, I kept my eyes forward, focusing on a spot on the wall rather than their glares. Judge Eleanor Simmons presided over the hearing, her reputation for fairness and no-nonsense approach preceding her. After the initial formalities, Rebecca presented the state's case, methodically walking through the evidence. The security footage showing my parents taking the car at 5 a.m., the social media posts declaring it a gift for Amber, the documentation proving my sole ownership, and the pattern of escalating financial attacks that followed my police report. Thomas Weaver's strategy quickly became apparent. He portrayed my parents as well-meaning, if perhaps overzealous, in their desire to give my sister a special birthday. He characterized me as a resentful daughter, overreacting to what should have been a family matter by involving law enforcement. Miss Mitchell has turned what was, at most, a miscommunication between family members into a criminal case. Weaver argued smoothly. The state's resources could be better utilized pursuing actual criminals, not parents who made a misguided decision out of love for their daughters. The phrase "both daughters" made me clench my jaw, knowing their actions had shown no love or consideration for me whatsoever. Judge Simmons remained inscrutable throughout, occasionally asking clarifying questions but giving no indication of her leanings. When she called for testimony, I was the first witness. Taking the stand, I swore to tell the truth and faced the courtroom. Rebecca guided me through my testimony carefully, allowing me to establish the facts without emotionality. I described discovering my car missing, viewing the security footage, finding the social media posts, and the subsequent financial attacks. Then came cross-examination. Thomas Weaver approached with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Miss Mitchell, would you describe your relationship with your sister as competitive? Rebecca objected immediately. Relevance, Your Honor. I'll allow it. But counsel should be moving toward a relevant point, Judge Simmons ruled. I kept my voice steady. I wouldn't describe it as competitive from my side. We have different interests and career paths. But surely growing up, there must have been some rivalry? That's natural between siblings. Any rivalry was not mutual. I was focused on my own goals. Weaver shifted tactics. Your parents paid for your education, correct? No, they did not. I worked multiple jobs throughout college and took out student loans, which I've since repaid. This clearly wasn't the answer Head expected. But they provided for you throughout your childhood. They provided basic necessities, yes. And this car, it was quite expensive for someone your age, wasn't it? A luxury vehicle. It was within my budget based on my salary and savings. I researched extensively and made a financially responsible choice. Wouldn't a truly responsible choice have been to help your sister who was struggling financially instead of purchasing a luxury item for yourself? Rebecca objected again. Argumentative, Your Honor. Sustained. Judge Simmons agreed, giving Weaver a warning look. Throughout the questioning, I maintained the calm demeanor Rebecca and I had practiced, refusing to be baited into emotional responses despite Weaver's increasingly provocative questions. When he finally concluded his cross-examination, I felt exhausted but relieved that I'd maintained my composure. The testimony continued with Officer Jackson describing the initial report and investigation, followed by the bank representative detailing the unauthorized withdrawal attempt. Kelly's testimony about the workplace harassment was particularly damaging to the defense, as it established a clear pattern of retaliatory behavior. The most surprising moment came during my cousin Jessica's testimony. She calmly recounted multiple instances of my parents taking others' possessions without permission, always with the same justification of family sharing. There was a pattern, Jessica explained. If Amber wanted something, Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert would find a way to get it for her, even if it belonged to someone else, and anyone who objected was labeled selfish or not a team player. During a brief recess, Rebecca squeezed my arm encouragingly. "You're doing great." The judge seems engaged with the evidence, and Weaver's family misunderstanding narrative is falling apart. When court resumed, it was the defense's turn to present witnesses. My mother took the stand first, tearfully describing how they had only intended to borrow the car for Amber's birthday weekend. "We were going to return it," she insisted. "We just wanted to make her birthday special." "And why didn't you ask your older daughter for permission?" Rebecca asked during cross-examination. My mother hesitated. "We didn't think she would understand. Stephanie has always been more independent, less family-oriented." "Less family-oriented," Rebecca repeated. "Yet, according to bank records, she sent birthday and Christmas gifts to both you and Amber every year while maintaining her own financial independence. Is that correct?" "Well, yes, but, and did you ask her permission to take her car?" "No, but we're her parents. We didn't think we needed to." "Did you have a spare key made without her knowledge?" Another hesitation. "Yes." "And the social media posts describing the car as a gift for your younger daughter, how do those align with your claim that it was only a temporary loan?" My mother had no good answer for that. My father's testimony was even more damaging to their case. Under Rebecca's precise questioning, his frustration mounted visibly until he finally snapped. "Of course we took the car. Amber needed it more than Stephanie. Stephanie has everything, the fancy job, the nice apartment. Amber deserves nice things too. If Stephanie was a proper daughter, she would have offered it herself." The courtroom fell silent at his outburst. Judge Simmons' eyebrows rose significantly. "So to be clear, Mr. Mitchell," Rebecca continued calmly, "you believe you were entitled to take your adult daughter's property without permission because, in your opinion, her sister deserved it more. That's not exactly what I..." "And the attempted bank withdrawal of $5,000 from Miss Mitchell's account after she filed the police report, was that also because your younger daughter deserved that money more?" "That was different. We needed that money to pay for Thomas' retainer because of Stephanie's ridiculous charges." His admission of the financial fraud attempt in open court was so unexpected that even Thomas Weaver looked stunned. Rebecca simply thanked him and returned to her seat, allowing his words to hang in the air. Amber's testimony was the final nail in the defense's coffin. Clearly coached to appear sympathetic, she began by describing her excitement about receiving the car as a surprise gift. "I had no idea where it came from at first," she claimed. "Mom and Dad just showed up with it, saying it was my birthday present." "And when did you learn it actually belonged to your sister?" Rebecca asked. "Not until the police showed up." Amber insisted. "I was shocked." Rebecca approached with a printout of Amber's Instagram. "Is this your social media account?" "Yes. And this post, dated the evening before your sister reported the car stolen, it shows you with the car, correct?" "Yes." "Please read the caption." Amber's voice faltered as she read, "Oh my God, best early birthday gift ever. Thank you at Mom and Dad for the new wheels. Number blessed number, new coroner number, dream come true." And in the comments, Rebecca continued, "When someone asked if it was new, you replied, please read your response. It's my sister's, but Mom and Dad are giving it to me because I need it more than she does, lol. So, you were aware it belonged to your sister before the police arrived, weren't you?" Amber's carefully constructed testimony crumbled under further questioning, revealing she had known exactly whose car it was and had participated enthusiastically in the plan to appropriate it permanently. By the time closing arguments concluded, the transformation in the courtroom atmosphere was palpable. What had begun as a case that might have seemed trivial or merely a family dispute had revealed itself as something far more troubling, a pattern of entitlement, theft, and retaliation that had escalated to serious financial fraud. Judge Simmons delivered her decision with clear conviction. Based on the evidence presented, I find probable cause to proceed with all charges against all three defendants. The security footage alone would be sufficient to establish the vehicle theft, but the additional evidence of financial fraud attempts, workplace harassment, and the defendant's own admissions in court today paint a disturbing picture of ongoing, escalating criminal behavior. She looked directly at my parents. Family relationships do not grant immunity from the law. If anything, they create a greater responsibility to respect boundaries and property. The court finds the defense's characterization of these events as a misunderstanding to be wholly unsupported by the evidence. The case would proceed to trial unless a plea agreement was reached. As we left the courtroom, a local reporter approached, asking for comment on the unusual family case. I declined, but the story ran anyway the next day. Family car theft case reveals pattern of financial abuse. The article was factual and fair, focusing on the legal aspects rather than sensationalizing the family drama, but it brought a new layer of public attention to the situation. I received dozens of messages from strangers with similar stories of family entitlement and theft, many expressing gratitude that someone was publicly standing up against such behavior. Their support reinforced that this case had implications beyond my personal situation. It touched on broader issues of family dynamics, boundaries, and legal accountability. 2 days after the preliminary hearing, Rebecca called with news. Your parents' attorney reached out. They want to discuss a plea deal, this time on our terms. The validation of that moment, knowing that the truth had finally been acknowledged and that my stand for justice was being vindicated, brought the first real sense of peace I'd felt since finding my car missing that fateful morning. 6 months after the courthouse proceedings concluded, I stood in my parking space, key fob in hand, looking at my car with new eyes. The midnight blue Audi no longer symbolized just my professional achievement. It had become a tangible reminder of my personal strength and boundaries. The legal case had ultimately ended with a plea deal, but one that reflected the seriousness of what had occurred. My parents and Amber pled guilty to theft and attempted fraud. Their sentence included 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service each, mandatory counseling, and full restitution for the car damage and legal fees. Most importantly to me, the agreement required a formal written acknowledgement that their actions constituted theft and fraud, not a misunderstanding or a family matter. The court also granted a no-contact order for 6 months, giving me space to heal without their presence or pressure. Those months had been transformative. My career at Horizon Marketing had continued to flourish. Kelly had become not just a boss but a mentor, helping me navigate the intersection of professional growth and personal healing. 3 months after the case concluded, I was offered a position leading our newest client acquisition team, a role that came with both greater responsibility and a significant salary increase. The promotion allowed me to move to a new apartment in a secure building with underground parking and 24-hour security. The extra precaution wasn't necessarily needed anymore, but it gave me peace of mind that had been lacking in my previous place, where every unexpected sound had triggered anxiety for months. My therapy with Dr. Bennett continued, shifting focus from crisis management to deeper healing of childhood wounds. Through our work together, I began to recognize how the family dynamics had shaped my self-perception, work habits, and relationships. Acknowledging these patterns was the first step toward changing them. Boundary setting isn't just about saying no to others. Dr. Bennett explained during one particularly insightful session. It's also about saying yes to yourself, to your needs, your values, your right to exist as a separate, autonomous person. This perspective helped me navigate the complicated emotions that arose when the no-contact order expired. My mother was the first to reach out, sending a carefully worded email that skated around the edges of an apology without quite getting there. After consulting with both Dr. Bennett and Rebecca, I agreed to a carefully managed meeting in a public coffee shop. Rachel waited at a nearby table, providing both moral support and an exit strategy if needed. My mother arrived alone, looking both older and smaller than I remembered. The confident, authoritative woman who had dominated my childhood seemed diminished somehow, uncertain in this new dynamic where her usual tactics held no power. You look well, she said after an awkward greeting. I am well, I replied simply. The conversation that followed was strained but civil. She spoke of superficial things, neighborhood gossip, distant relatives, the changing seasons, avoiding any mention of what had transpired or her role in it. When she finally broached the subject, it was obliquely, "Your father is still processing everything. He feels the court was unfair. The court was extremely fair," I countered calmly. "The evidence was clear," she sighed. "I know we made mistakes, Stephanie. But we're still family. Being family doesn't mean what you think it means, Mom. It doesn't give you the right to take what's mine or to hurt me when I object. We never meant to hurt you," she insisted, the familiar deflection rising automatically. "We just wanted to help Amber. By stealing from me," she flinched at the directness. "It wasn't stealing in our minds at the time." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You never saw me as a separate person with rights to my own property, my own boundaries, my own life. I was just a resource to be used for Amber's benefit." My mother had no response to that truth. When we parted, she asked if we could meet again. I told her I would consider it, but only if she was willing to acknowledge the reality of what had happened and her role in it. The ball was in her court. My father never reached out directly. According to my mother, he remained convinced he had done nothing wrong and that I had betrayed the family by involving the legal system. His stubborn refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing was disappointing but not surprising. Amber's attempt at reconciliation came via text message. "I'm sorry things got so messed up. Can we just move past this drama already?" The non-apology was so typically Amber that it almost made me laugh. I responded simply, "A real apology acknowledges specific actions and harm caused. When you're ready for that, let me know." She didn't reply. The most healing relationships during this period came from unexpected sources. My friendship with Taylor, Officer Jackson's sister, blossomed into one of mutual support and understanding. Jessica, my cousin who had testified on my behalf, became a regular presence in my life, often joining Rachel and me for our Sunday brunches. My co-workers, who had witnessed parts of the family drama firsthand, formed a protective circle around me. We celebrated holidays together, creating new traditions that were free from the tension and favoritism that had characterized my family gatherings. Dr. Bennett had a name for this: chosen family. Throughout history, she explained, people have created family structures based on mutual respect and care rather than just DNA. For many, these chosen connections provide the genuine support that their biological families couldn't or wouldn't offer. This concept resonated deeply with me. As the months passed, I built meaningful relationships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide or how well I performed. The constant need to prove my worth, a legacy of my family dynamic, gradually eased, replaced by a growing confidence in my inherent value. My car, once a symbol of professional achievement, had transformed into something more profound. Every time I pressed the key fob and heard the responsive beep, I was reminded that I had stood my ground, that I had valued myself enough to demand justice, even when it would have been easier to capitulate for family peace. The keys themselves had taken on symbolic significance. They were no longer just access to a vehicle, but represented the keys to my own life, my autonomy, my right to set and maintain boundaries. I had a custom keychain made, a small compass with the word "forward" engraved on the back. It was my daily reminder that no matter what happened with my biological family in the future, my direction was clear. On the 1-year anniversary of filing the police report, I sat down at my computer and wrote a letter not to my parents or Amber, but to myself. I acknowledged the pain of the past year but also celebrated the growth, the new connections, and the stronger sense of self that had emerged from the ordeal. I ended the letter with words that would have been impossible for me to believe a year earlier. You are enough, exactly as you are. Your worth is not determined by what you provide to others or how well you perform. You deserve respect, consideration, and love not as something to be earned, but as your birthright as a human being. The journey wasn't over. Healing rarely follows a neat, linear path. There were still difficult days, moments of grief for the family relationships I had wished for rather than the ones I actually had. But there was also a new freedom in accepting reality rather than chasing approval I might never receive. If this difficult year had taught me anything, it was that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that matter most. And sometimes, calling 911 on the people who should have protected you is the first step toward finally protecting yourself. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect your property or autonomy? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with anyone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, family should lift you up, not take what's yours. Take care of yourselves and each other.